launch straight in to tell everyone about solar streets and potentially what's happening in other places like Marlow and Hadlam and Tame and Chinner and the other places that.
Yep. Okay. So if okay with everyone, I'm going to try and share my screen, which should reveal a presentation. Is that showing a presentation? Can everyone see you?
Yep.
Yep. Great. Okay. Fine. So so this presentation will probably take about 15 minutes. It'll probably help to, if you save the questions to the end, we'll get through it quicker, I think. And
sorry, I can't see the screen, Penelope.
Can everyone else?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I can.
Sorry, Rafik. I think we're going to have to send it to
carry
you
on.
afterwards.
Carry on. Yeah.
Yes, I can send you a copy of it. Okay, so Solar Streets is, as you can see on there, there are 3 bits to Solar Street in terms of who the partners are. The first partner is a renewable energy company called IDEA. It's spelt IDEA, but it's pronounced IDEA. So they are the people who invented the scheme. You've got ourselves as a green group, which is myself and my wife, Kat, and we effectively market the scheme to potential customers. And then the third leg is either the local environmental group like yourselves and or the local council. And we'll talk a little bit about that later, because it's often great to get the local council support as well as the local green group who tends to do more of the work of it. So so what I'll cover is basically what is Solar Streets as a concept. I'll tell you a little bit about IDEA, the creator and installer of the program, and then a bit more sort of information about what solar panel systems are all about, what bits there are to it and how they work, and crucially economics, because and the reason we cover this quite early on is because a lot of people ask us about it, because at the end of the day you're going to be spending quite a lot of money. What are you going to get back for that? And then we can talk about how we can make it happen, both with the group and how we communicate it to the potential customers. So there's 4 bits to the Solar Streets offer. One is an attractive price point. So a very competitive price compared to what happens if somebody goes and tries and sources their own quote. And I'll go into a bit more detail about that in a moment. The second thing is that this is a quote for a system bespoke to your individual house. Some online offers take a bit of an average sort of point of view, but what this system delivers is an accurate quote of how much energy will be produced by your solar panel system, taking all of the factors into account, which I'll cover later. The standard 10 panel system that we've got at the top there, which has got a capacity of 3.6 kilowatts, will save about 0.91 tons of carbon per year. And obviously, the more people who do that, the less emissions that are created within a town, and it helps a town become carbon neutral. And a lot of towns have declared a climate emergency, and that is specifically one of their goals, to try and get back to zero, which is the same as 1990, by about 2030. Buckinghamshire is a little bit unusual in that respect, in that not a lot of the towns in Buckinghamshire have, but certainly a few parishes have as well. And the final part, for every installation that happens, there is a community fund donation at the rate of £50 for a residential house or £100 for a commercial project. And the only stipulation that we have is that that money must be spent on something sustainable, but it is usually the Green Group and or the council who decide what that is going to be spent on. But I will give you an example of what a other scheme has spent it on in a moment as well. So the price point. So I mentioned the headline price for a 10 panel 3.6 kilowatt system that we're offering is £4,100. That has gone up over the last few weeks by a little bit, but I'll explain why that's happened. The Energy Savings Trust quote that the average size system installed in the UK is 3.5 kilowatts, so just slightly smaller than the system we're talking about. And they say that the average price is about 4,800, but they haven't updated that figure, and we believe it's a bit higher now. And as a final bit of comparison, Spirit Energy are quite a large solar installer based in Reading. And what they say the cost of a bigger 4 kilowatt system is £6,000, including VAT. and our 12 panel system, which would have a capacity of 4.3 kilowatts, so slightly bigger, is £4,300. And their estimate of the cost has gone up. It was £5,500 a month ago. So they've put their prices up by about £500. We've effectively put them up by about £300. So hopefully that'll give you some reassurance, is that that is a relatively cheap price for a system. So let's tell you a little bit about IDEA, Renewable Energy Systems. So they've been trading since 2008. They're based in Westbury in Wiltshire, was where they started. And they do solar PV, battery storage systems, and electric vehicle charging points. They've installed over 1,000 systems in total, ranging from domestic to commercial, including schools, and utility-sized solar PV systems, which you would tend to describe as solar farms that you see by the side of the motorway. Committed to keep helping customers take control of their energy bills and fight climate change. And on the back of the expansion in solar streets, they opened their second branch in High Wycombe in October 2020, which is in the Cressex industrial area, that part of the town. And as I mentioned, we act as the council contact and the marketing arm of Solar Streets, but the customer is contracting directly with IDEA. So we're effectively in the background there. If you're considering having solar panels installed, you need to make sure that the installer has all of the correct certification you need to operate in that market. And there's 3 elements we'd point out. The first one is they've got to be a member of the MCS, the Micro Generation Certification Scheme, and you need to be a member of this if you're going to install a system which is going to attract an export tariff. I'll explain what that is later on. It used to be that you have to have an MCS installation for feed-in tariff as well, so it means that it's a highly credible certified installation. Second part is about consumer protection. You're going to be giving over a deposit to IDEA, and then they're going to come and install it. But there have been instances in various different industries where you give a deposit to somebody and that somebody either goes bust or disappears. Well, under this scheme, as members of the HICE scheme, if anything did happen to IDEA, you'd get your money back. So that's, just for peace of mind. And the third one there is a body called NAPIT, which ensures that the firm has got all the necessary insurances that you need to operate in this market, including things like public liability insurance and so on. And of course, as electricians, all of their work is self-certified and is able to do that. So it meets all the regulations to do with all of that building regulation stuff. So we mentioned about a competitive price. So how can we deliver a competitive price? So what we do is we focus on one town or area at once, and we try and get at least 10 installations that we expect to deliver over a shortish period of time. That doesn't mean we have to wait until we've got 10 orders, or we, will only install once we've got those 10, but we pick towns where we think the combination of the size of the town and the enthusiasm of the local group or the local council will mean that we'll definitely install 10. And what that enables us to do is economies on doing surveys, on scaffolding, but most importantly, buying all the kit, because obviously if you're buying 10 sets of solar panels, you're going to get a better rate than if you were just buying one set. So Solar Streets has been running since April 2019. We've done over 200 surveys. We've installed over 100 installations, and we're currently doing about 1 a day over the last in 2020. So therefore, we've saved over 100 tons of carbon saved, because quite a lot of the earlier systems were quite big systems. And if you look at the roll call of towns that we've done it started off in Frome, a very green, enthused town down in Somerset, then through Wells and Glastonbury, which were also down there, which is obviously near where IDEA started up, but then into West Berkshire. We first got involved in the scheme with Henley-on-Thames, St Albans, very big scheme going on there, Tame, and you can read all the others there. But in your particular area, we've got Tame, Henley, Marlow, Haddenham, and we're launching in Chinnor, which is just down the M40 from you as well, and Wallingford's pretty close. So a lot of towns. There's always a slight nuance to each of the different schemes, but the basics are the same. And you know what's quite good about this is it's very easy for you if you want to get a reference for how it's going on in another town. You can just get in touch with the people who've done it in Henley or further down in the West Country, and they'll tell you how well it's gone. This is what some of the installations look like. The ones at the top are some of the earlier systems, which you can see had silver frames around the panels. The ones we're installing now, though, are the black panels that you see below. And in the last price change, we've just uprated the power per panel as well. So the ones at the top were something like 275 watts per panel. These ones we're installing at the bottom now are now 360 watts per panel. So that means either for the same number of panels, you get a greater output, or you can get a viable system on a smaller roof than you could have done even 2 years ago. Community benefit. So we talked about this. So one of the figures we like to mention is that in Frome, there are 7,000 owner occupied houses. And over a period of about 9 months, they got 70 installs. So that's a sales rate of 1% of the owner occupiers in that town. 70 installations times £50, because they were all residential, generated £3,500 of community benefit, and it paid for half of the installation that you can see right at the background there, just behind the scaffolding. It's just going up, of an installation in the YMCA Youth Club that they did there. The club then got some grants to do the rest of the installation, so they now are saving a substantial part of their electricity bill, and that means they're saving money. They can reinvest that in providing extra facilities for the people in the town. So a little bit about what solar systems are. Well, basically, solar PV, PV stands for photovoltaic, and it converts the sun's rays into electricity. So the sun's rays hit the panels, converted into electricity, DC, direct current electricity, which then goes through a transformer, which in this system is called an inverter, and that converts the DC electricity into usable AC electricity, and then it can either be used inside the house in various different ways, or it can be exported to the grid. You do need an export meter that you have to ask your energy supplier to provide, but they will do free of charge. And you'll see that little compass point there on the left hand side, and it's got S for south in red. It's not true that solar systems only work with south-facing roofs. They work best with south-facing roofs, but good output can also be gained anything from east through south to west. So if you've got an east-facing roof, you're going to get the majority of the benefit in the morning, and in the a west-facing roof will get the majority of the benefit in the afternoon. The only direction that isn't a very good idea is if your roof is north facing. So that's the only circumstance we would say it's not possible to install on. Not surprisingly, solar systems generate more electricity in the summer than they do in the winter, and that's just a graph which shows how many sunshine hours they are. So you can see the peaks are usually between about May and August, but there are still generation happening in the winter period. So it's not true that they don't work at all in winter, but they don't produce as much output. And if we convert that and compare it to demand, you'll see these blue bars here. That is the output from the solar system, but the orange line is the consumption. So they're both sort of, if you like, U-shaped curves, but one's going one way and one's going the other way. So what will happen is in this graph, between April and August, you won't be able to use all of your solar, so you'll be exporting some. And in January to March and September to December, your solar system won't generate enough electricity, so you'll still be net importing from the grid. And that's an example. It's actually a school, and the total usage that the school could use of the generation potential was 49%. So these are the latest panels we're using to give you an idea of the size of them. They are just over 1 meter wide, 1.755 meters tall, and 35 millimeters thick. They weigh 20 kilograms, but of course that's over quite a big area. They come with a 12-year product guarantee, which means that if they fail during that period, they'll be replaced free of charge. And they also have something called a performance warranty. And that means that at the end of 25-year period, which is the typical life of a system, they will still be generating at no worse than 85% of the original design capacity. The ideal tilt angle to put on a roof is 35 degrees. If your roof is at 20 degrees or at 45 degrees, you will get output. It just won't be the optimum output. People sometimes ask us, well, we've got a flat roof, so what can you do there? Well, basically, you have to put some framing systems in so that you do provide a tilt. And as you can see in this application here, you've got 2 tilts, one in each direction. So I suspect that this application has got an east and a west facing aspect. That's how they've decided to align the panels there. It does add to the cost, and you've also got to think about the extra weight of the frame to go onto your roof as well. So with smart usage of solar, what you're trying to do is to displace your import of electricity from the grid, from your electricity supplier, with your own electricity that you've made yourself. So you can do things like heat your water using a device called an iBoost. If you've got an immersion element in a hot water tank, you can use energy intensive appliances during the day. So you're trying to use as much of your output as possible. And you can think about what devices you use. So using a slow cooker uses much less power, it just uses the power of a light bulb. And you can schedule all of your items that need charging to do that during the day. So laptops and mobile phones and so on, do all of that during the day rather than at night. And an option is a battery storage system, which I'll come on into a moment. But basically, for every unit you are using of your own solar system, you are saving approximately 15 pence per kilowatt hour that your supplier would be charging you. Since January of 2020, there has been something called the Smart Export Guarantee. And this isn't the same as the feed-in tariff that was around a few years ago. What this is that if you can't use all of your solar output yourself, you can export it to the grid. And all large electricity suppliers are mandated to offer you an SEG tariff, but it does vary by supplier. The government has said very generously it has to be more than 0, and the highest one we're seeing at the moment is about 5.6 pence per kilowatt hour. So if we go back to the previous slide, your savings of using your own output are at 15p per kilowatt hour, and if you can't use them, you export it at 5.6p per kilowatt hour. So it's a threefold difference. So you want to try and make as much use of your output as you possibly can. We mentioned about battery systems. A good number for somebody who is in most of the day that the MCS recommend is that you can use about 37% of your solar system's output. If you want to try and maximize your solar system output to the highest possible levels, you will need a battery, because what that will do is any excess that you've not used during the day, it will store up and it will use that first in the evening when the solar system is no longer operating. A typical battery, like a 5 kilowatt one, you can see the middle one on the left there, will cost about £3,000. So that's additional to the £4,000 for the solar system. And in terms of weight and size, they're about the same size as an old PC base station. So basically 50 centimeters by 50 centimeters and 20 centimeters thick. And they're normally wall mounted, usually quite near where your fuse board is well. But they're very popular, and about half of the systems that we install are going in with a battery at the moment. So let's try and put all of that stuff together in terms of a calculation. So let's imagine our solar PV system has got a capacity of 4 kilowatt peak. And what that would do is produce about 3,600 kilowatt hours of electricity per year, which is about how much a standard 3 to 4 bedroom house consumes. But as mentioned before, you can't use all of your solar output because of the time phasing with the hours of the day. So as I mentioned before, a good number if you're in all day is about 37%. So let's do the maths on this. 37% of 3,600 kilowatts is 1,332 multiplied by 15p. So that's what you're saving by not using grid electricity. So that's £200. And then the balance of your output, the other 63%, the 2268 kilowatt hours, you're only going to get, let's say, 5 pence from your smart export guarantee tariff. So that'll generate £113. Put the two together, that's a saving of £313 per year versus your investment of £4,000. But electricity prices have tended to rise faster than normal inflation. They've typically risen by about 5% per year. So if you take that into account as well, those savings will grow by about 5% per year. So therefore, your break even on that system is likely to be about 9 or 10 years. And the rate of return of that investment is about 11%. And of course, your system will last for 25 years. The only thing you're likely to spend on that system during its life is you are likely to have to replace the inverter because they only last about 12 years. So in the calculations we've done on some of our information, we've taken that into account and spent that money on it, but you don't need to do any maintenance in the meantime. Planning permissions are an interesting one. Generally, you don't need planning permission for solar panels, but there are two exceptions to that. One is if it's a listed building, you are very unlikely to get planning permission to put them on a listed building. Second one is if you're in a conservation area. This varies by each council. Usually, as long as the panels are on the roof, then you should still be okay. The only thing you're definitely not allowed to do is to put solar panels on the wall, which is facing a road in a conservation area. But frankly, that would be quite unusual anyway. So we'd have to check with your local council, but usually in a conservation area, as long as you're putting them on the roof, you're usually okay, but you do have to check. So let's talk a little bit close to home now. Let's concentrate on the Wycombe area, and I'm describing this as the Wycombe district. So it's the town and surrounding area. So it's the council defined area. The number of homes in the 2011 census were 68,000, probably more since then, I guess, as well. But the proportion of those that were owner occupied is 47,000. So if we take the 1% potential that we have seen in Frome, then you'd expect to get something like 472 installations in the district as a whole, which would generate, assuming there were no businesses as well, something like £23,600 worth of community benefit. So if it was going to be spent on, say, solar PV systems for local community centres, you could probably do 4 of them for that. And then the carbon savings would be probably about 238 tonnes on those number of installations, all based on the 3.6 kilowatt capacity. So now turning to how you make it happen. So what happens usually is that ourselves and the Green Group basically do all of the marketing. So you would agree a marketing plan with Kat, and we can discuss what that involves in a moment. We deliver that together via chosen media, and there's certain things we'd like the Green Group to do, certain things we do ourselves. We host Q&A sessions via Zoom. This has replaced the sort of town hall sessions we used to do before, but has worked very effectively, I have to say. We can answer any questions, we can provide updates on progress, and we pay for most of the materials, although we might ask you to either pay for or do some of the things like delivering leaflets. And we would set a launch date, which would be the Q&A session, and we do some marketing before and after it. So what does the council do? Well, we think it's good that the council adds their support, but they don't have to say that they recommend the scheme, because they don't normally like to say that. It's great if we can get their logo to be used on all materials, but the sort of way we express this support is something like the sentence I'll just read out to you now. So we might say something like, Wycombe District Council is happy to welcome solar streets as a way of helping residents reduce their carbon footprint and is consistent with the council's declaration of a climate emergency. The only problem with that is I don't think they've declared one yet, but you can sort of see the sentiment that we've got there. And they can also, the councils do have newsletters, they do have channels and everything, but particularly they normally have property, and we can ask to place banners banners and posters on council assets, and usually you can do that. And just to give you a few more examples, I'll just read out the top one for you. So this is Swanage in Dorset, which is a scheme that's just about to launch next week, I believe. Solar Streets is a great way for local residents to learn more about the installation of solar panels, and I would encourage everyone to investigate this opportunity to increase the use of clean energy in our community. And that's from the Mayor, and you can see some other ones there. So this is what would happen if the customer decides they want to go ahead with it. They basically just email IDEA with the full address and the contact number. And what that would do is allow IDEA to do a desktop survey using Google Earth. And that will say whether the property is unsuitable for solar panels. And that's usually because it's got a small roof, or because it's overlooked by a building, so there's a lot of shading, or there's just not enough room on the roof, particularly because they've got dormer windows and so on. And the usual fall off rate there is about 20%. So of 100 leads coming in, we'd expect 80% to be suitable roofs, which normally go through to the next stage, which is a survey done, which at the moment under COVID is done remotely in most cases. And what IDEA can do is they'll do an accurate measurement of the roof, but they may ask the householder to do things like take photographs of the inside of the roof, the fuse board, and the side of the roof to calculate the tilt angle. So from that, they can still come up with a quotation for the system and an estimate of how much electricity that system is going to generate. If the customer likes that, then they simply pay a 25% deposit, and then at a later stage, the installation is organised, hopefully with some others in the town as well, to maximise the economics. And in each case, there is a web page on a website that's called solarstreets.co.uk. So it would be normally / then the town name. So it might be /Wycombe. That tells everybody a bit more about the scheme, particularly who are the local sponsors. So a few details about the Green Group and what the council has said about the scheme. It says either when the Q&A sessions are, or it points to recordings of the Q&A sessions that have already happened. There's a load of videos, which is me explaining stuff, usually doing narrated PowerPoint. There's one on the economics of solar systems, which is very like the page that I showed you earlier, but with about 3 or 4 different scenarios, including various different occupancies and whether you should go ahead with solar panels if you've got to borrow the money to do so. The answer is yes. And then we have a optional energy deal with Octopus Energy. We thought a lot of energy companies would like to get involved in this scheme, so we asked several of them whether they did. Only Octopus did say that they want to join in with it. Octopus, luckily, are actually one of the best energy companies, according to Which. They've won Which Best Energy Supplier for the last 4 years, and Octopus have only been going 5 years, so that's good news as well. And the tariff that we've got the deal with them on is a renewable energy tariff as well. And what they do is they give, Octopus give the customer £50, and they also donate £50 to the community fund as well. So that's great, because even when you're communicating with people, you don't have to have a solar system to get that deal. You can just swap that in the same way you swap to any other energy as well. And then we've got an info mail address that we can handle any sort of questions. So that's a bit of a mixture of a presentation to you guys and some of the things that we say to the public. So at that point, I'm going to stop sharing and invite initial questions, which both myself and Kat will try and answer.
Can I just interject there and say thank you, Andy. That's really helpful to for you to go through that. Just to say that Wycombe District Council doesn't actually exist anymore. We haven't got a town council as such, but we do have the High Wycombe Community Board, of which this group that you're talking to here is a subgroup of a subgroup of.
Yep. Okay. Got it.
We are kind of Buckinghamshire Council, but a community kind of group based around. Oh, it's complicated. Sorry.
So you're effectively both. Then you are effectively part of the council, and you are part of the green movement within the town.
Yes, I suppose in a very complicated way. So.
Okay.
But hopefully in a position to consider this and consider it for the town, and to possibly take it forward. So
Okay.
I suppose at this point there must be a whole heap of questions. So
there probably are. I'm aware that Kirsty from
yes,
Energy has to go soon. So I was just wondering whether we need to bring Kirsty in first.
that sounds good to me. Yeah.
So shall I just say what our involvement is?
Yeah.
And just sort of give it that context. So some of you might be aware that you have a community energy group in Wycombe called Low Carbon Chilterns. Has anybody heard of Low Carbon Chilterns?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they are your community energy group, but they're actually, they describe themselves as moribund, not dead, but moribund. Because obviously when I set up Buckinghamshire Community Energy, I got in touch with all the other community groups in Buckinghamshire, of which I'm only aware of Low Carbon Chilterns, Marlow Energy Group, and the people that run Gorcott Solar. So I thought, well, there's definitely a county-wide gap here. And what we do actually, our mission is to help buildings, businesses, and people decarbonise their lives. So we weren't necessarily going to do solar streets immediately because I'm still really busy just setting everything up. But because Low Carbon Chilterns didn't want to handle it, I said that we would support Andy and Kat by providing a sort of local on the ground marketing support. And I will liaise with Low Carbon Chilterns who have a mailing list still and will help to promote it within Wycombe, alongside obviously what you guys do. And I don't know, I think Transition Wycombe is not necessarily very live at the moment, but you know, any of those kind of groups, hopefully we can connect with those. And I suppose the reason, you know, like in Hadnam, Zero Carbon Hadnam have very much managed that process. They are the local green group there. I've only stepped in really because Wycombe felt like it needed that bit of support, and also for my own learning to see how it works and see what the local engagement is. So and it does fit with our Buckinghamshire wide mission to help people decarbonise. So that's really what I'm here for. And also just to add to what Andy said about your usage, as electric vehicles come in, that will actually be transformational as long as you're at home charging your electric vehicle, but that will be transformational for your business case in terms of how you get payback on solar panels. So I just wanted to add that as well. Does anybody have any questions about Buckinghamshire Community Energy? But I think Ellen might have me back another time to talk about that, so I don't kind of want to sort of hijack the solar streets thing.
I suggest, that it would be really helpful to talk to you in general about some of your decarbonising programmes across the county and how those could actually be brought into this forum as well. But yes, just aware that if we could kind of keep it to solar streets at the minute, but then invite you back, Kirsty, that sounds like a really useful thing. So I really appreciate you being here as well this evening. Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you again.
Oh, sorry. Thank you very much. I'll take off now, to get ready for my next meeting. But thank you so much. And Kat and Andy, I will definitely see you soon, I'm sure.
Okay, great.
Great. Thanks, Kirsty.
Thanks.
So we've got 10 minutes left of our meeting. I suggest we devote the rest of it to understanding solar streets thoroughly and sort of understanding what our role would be in it. And then we'll do our introductions to one another next week. This is our first meeting, in case you hadn't realised.
Great.
Yeah. So who wants to ask what question? Just unmute and ask away.
I guess I just
Hi, Andy. Hi. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to ask who the green group are. Is it just the two of you, or is it? And were you set up just for this project?
No, we were set up to do stuff in the renewable space, but this is our main project. We have been involved in a few bids from schools to try and get hold of government funding for stuff as well. But we're doing a lot of work on this at the moment, as you might imagine, with all those different towns and a lot of them launching at the moment.
So the question that follows on from that, which has to be asked, is how are you funded?
We are basically, we get a commission from IDEA from every installation.
Yes.
Simple as that.
Straightforward.
But from that, we do, as I say, we pay for most of the marketing materials. So we have an income, but we have some costs, and with our inconsiderable time at the moment as well.
Ali iPhone has a hand up. Ali iPhone isn't.
Sorry, sorry, this is Saf.
I thought it might be you,
I've
Saf.
got so many. Sorry, I've got so many phones, and I have to name them different. So I named it after my son. So sorry. Quick one, Andy. What's the take up with the other council with your scheme?
What, in terms of which councils have agreed to support it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it varies dramatically. I mean, Frome Town Council were the movers and shakers of the first scheme. And then we've got everything on a continuum to West Berkshire, where the council's not supporting it at all. So we have various different options. Recently, we're tending to get councils making supportive noises. We had one the other day where the council's come up with a really sort of supportive statement and issued that on a press release, but won't allow us to use their logo on any marketing materials. They are a bit schizophrenic sometimes because as a council, they don't want to be recommending a single commercial entity, but they're happy to support the concept of people saving carbon.
Sorry, I can't put my hand up or anything, Penelope.
Just put your hand
So
up.
can I come in?
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
It's actually, obviously, solar energy is very interesting and something we need to kind of mine, as it were, because this is free from the sun, as it were. But it seems that at the moment, with an investment of say 4,000 plus 3,000 on batteries, it will take you roughly 22 years to recoup your investment. Now, is there anything that can be done to reduce the initial investment, or because that may be putting people off unnecessarily?
Well, the quote that the savings that I was there, so starting at 300 and something, that's only for the solar system. If you had a battery on as well, you rightly identify, you go up to 7,000, but your savings would be a lot bigger because you would be able to use something like 90% of the output of your system.
Sorry, but I thought that was 200 plus 113 was the savings.
Yeah,
that included the battery.
Yeah, but if you No, that doesn't include the battery. That's just on the solar system. But if you were using a battery, you'd be getting a higher percentage at the higher 15 pence saving rate. So if, to make the maths easy, if you were going to get that 3,600 and you saved it all, then that would be 3,600 times 15p, which would be 540. So that'd be a much bigger saving, and therefore it would be the £7,000 divided by 540, and then you take the inflation into account as well. So basically, if you add the cost of the battery in, the internal rate of return and the payback period work out almost the same as just having a solar system.
And so, sorry, just one more question. I know you mentioned that apart from one item you need to do every 12 years or so, there's nothing else, but is there any maintenance cost or anything? No.
I mean, slightly unscrupulous solar suppliers will charge people a monthly fee for maintenance, but frankly, they don't need it. Once the system is up there, it's at an angle. The good old British rain provides enough washing facilities of them. And once it's all wired up, there should be no real reason why anything should fail. The only thing that is likely to need replacing, as I mentioned, is the inverter in about year 12. But apart from that, no, we don't even offer a maintenance service because we don't believe you need one.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
So I've got a question in terms of our role. Assuming we can get the council to give a supportive statement and hopefully allow the logo to be used, what would we as this bunch of people do? Do we just sit back and put our feet up and you do all the hard work?
No, unfortunately not.
Definitely not.
Actually, Kat, do you want to take that one? Because it's probably relevant.
Yeah. I mean, basically what we kind of expect from the scheme runners themselves is to actually do most of the advertising for it. So we will produce all the marketing materials you need, That includes things like banners, A5 leaflets. We'll do posters if you need them. We'll do online adverts with click here links so people can go to the website. We produce the website for you so that people can go there and get all the information that they need. And what we need you guys to do is point your people at all of that advertising. So we expect you to use social media. We expect you to use any online newsletters and make just the most of all of your contacts that you have, whether it's within the council or whether it's within other sustainable groups, and get them to post it as well. So that's what we're expecting from you. But generally we pay for all the marketing materials. So we'll produce as many A5 leaflets as you think you can deliver. The only thing we won't pay for generally is delivery, because that's just hugely expensive. But yes, that's what we expect from the group itself.
Okay, that's really quite clear. Well, it seems clear to me anyway.
Great.
Who else has got questions?
Can I ask a question about, it might just be one for IDEA actually. Are they part of a funding framework at all?
No.
Okay.
There is with solar panels, unfortunately, there now is no way of funding them. So
okay.
if people don't have the money for it, then the only thing that we suggest is people go on the internet and they go and find who's got the cheapest home improvement loans. But there isn't any government schemes. There is for businesses. There is a business one whereby there's up to £5,000 towards 1/3 of the cost of a solar system, and that is live in Buckinghamshire via low carbon workspaces, I think they're called. So if you had a business and your solar system quote came in at £15,000, then you could get 5,000 back from that as the local support. But the same isn't true of any residential options, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Two technical questions, if I may. These are lithium batteries, presumably. What's the expected life of them?
It's about how many cycles they go through. So it depends how much they're used up and down and everything. I think the expectation is that they're probably 10 years, something like that, 10 or 12 years. But it does depend how many times they've been cycled right up to full top up and then down to depletion. Yeah. And have you any idea of the carbon footprint of actually constructing all this material? Yeah. I mean, yeah, the actual solar systems themselves have got an embedded carbon that's repaid after 6 years. So that's the number that we've heard is frequently mentioned for the solar side. So basically, it's a 25-year system. You'll have repaid the carbon debt after 6 and have 19 years of pure zero carbon generation.
Yeah. And also that is actually decreasing, because the more companies and also countries start using more renewables for their grid. It's like a lot of people balk at the fact that these panels are produced in China, and China's had its problems, but China is also one of the countries that has the most renewable things that they've added to the country at the moment. So they're actually at the top of the list on countries producing renewable ways of doing things. So the more and more they use renewables, the more their grid itself will become less carbonized, and also then the payback will be a lot shorter, because it won't cost as much carbon to actually produce the panels in the first place.
Any more questions?
I was going to ask if there's...
Penelope, can I just ask something? I hate to say that. Andy, if me, Penelope, and somebody else starts up a company in Wycombe doing the same thing as you, there's nothing stopping us doing that, is there?
Nope. But have you got experience?
I'm just scratching my head is because, well, yeah, I'm an electronics engineer for 30 years, so I do know what I'm talking about. But I'm just wondering, you know, if we're going to sell, we're basically going to sell there on residence as a councillor. I'm not sure, you know, maybe I'm a bit naive or something. I'm not, you know, I'm a bit of a businessman, but you know, where's the gain in you know us doing this? You know.
Okay, can I just ask
we're
you
selling
something?
your idea.
Ali, can I ask you something, Ali?
No, it's his dad.
Go on.
Have you actually got that company? Have you got that company set up? Have you got the marketing behind it? Can you actually produce those installations over the next couple of months in the Wycombe area?
Obviously, nobody's going to come and say, yes, I want those installation in a couple of areas. We have to obviously promote your stuff. You know, it's a difficult question, I know, you know, but where's, you know, if we're trying to promote you and trying to sell your idea, but it seems like, you know, you guys, you know, obviously need money for your venture, and we're trying to promote it. We're doing it free of charge and everything. That's the only thing that doesn't sit well with me.
So
I don't know if I've phrased that right or not.
That's the way that I look at it, is that assuming the figures that we've been shared tonight are true, and we can all go and check those out quite easily, then we are free labour in order to keep the costs down, in order to maximise the number of solar panels that get put up. And that actually is exactly where we come in, because we keep the marketing costs down, and by bulk buying and bulk installation, it means that the costs can be kept down as well. So I think that's really that for me is behind this. But I think what we'll do is we'll pick up next week without the Green Group here and discuss whether we think we should be doing this.
What I would say,
I think you've said it right, Penelope. The way you know what I was trying to say, I think you've said the thing, and you've explained it well. I'm sure Andy will explain it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, you know, we've done, how we've got into various different towns has varied, but sometimes we've had to do competitive tenders, and we did that with St Albans, and St Albans didn't sort of go into a lot of detail, but said, if you were going to do a bulk scheme for St Albans, how would you make it work, and what would you charge for the price of the panels? And the fact that we'd already done this and could prove that we'd done this in several other towns meant that, even though I don't think we were just the cheapest there, but the fact we'd done it before and we could demonstrate that we'd done that meant that they gave us a contract. And the other thing that I would encourage any of you to do is to, you've seen the sort of towns that we've dealt with before. I mean, particularly the ones that are near you, like Tame and Henley and so on, then talk to the people about what sort of due diligence they did on the scheme as well. Because we've never failed to go through a town as a result of something that's come up in that due diligence. The only thing that's happened is that sometimes some of the councils don't support it to the same level as others, which we've been quite open about already.
Holly, you had
Thank you, Andy.
No problem.
One final question, if I may.
Holly, I'm waiting for Holly to come in.
Sorry, I was just going to ask whether in other areas, there's been much uptake from the councils themselves to install the panels on their own, like council-owned buildings.
I mean, I know that some of them have, because I've seen their names on Zoom calls, and then I've seen their names come through on the sales orders. So yes, there has been a few instances where we've done that, and particularly the people in groups like this, we know loads of people who've installed as a result of that, because if they hadn't got solar panels before, now that they've learned more about it, they said, well, I want to do it myself. So we've had lots of people from the green groups install, and we have had some councils as well.
But not especially on like council-owned.
We've had a couple of councils who've actually installed them. We've got one at the moment that's got a quote and is going ahead with it for their library, and they're actually installing panels on the library and a couple of the public toilets as well. So on the toilet blocks, they're looking to put panels on the toilet blocks, you know, to power whatever they've got in there as well.
Good.
Thank you.
Rafiq, what was your?
It's just, say, for example, we're looking at uptake of renewable energy kind of things like solar panels. Say within the next 5 years, what percentage of households would you expect out of these 47,000 in Buckinghamshire, for example, owner-occupied houses to have taken this up to, treat it as a success, what would you be expecting? Or what would you, in an ideal world, what percentage would be beneficial for climate change purposes, not necessarily for your company?
Yeah, well, the overall install rate.
Sorry, Andy, just before you answer, just to dampen your balloon, your figures were based on the district, and we're just the town of High Wycombe.
Yep.
So
it's going to be a bit smaller than that. What we've talked about then. Yeah, that's fine. But I think nationally, there's about 5%. There's a million houses with solar panels on the assumption that most of them are owner occupiers, because I don't think there's much motivation for a tenant to put them up. Then that's about 5% of the owner occupiers. So we're sort of saying there's 5% there already nationally. We're looking to add another 1% to that to get to up to about 6%. But I think, as I think somebody else mentioned earlier, we're going into a future whereby we're going to be driving electric vehicles, and we'll be heating our homes by some sort of electrically powered device like a heat pump. So the demand for electricity in the next 30 years is going to double. And I don't see a huge number of nuclear power stations being built, and I don't see that many onshore wind farms and so on. So the more that the general public can do to install stuff on their own properties, the better. Whether it'll be 10%, 20% by then, I don't know. But, I think even a 1% per year, maybe as a start point, would be quite good. So that would mean that over the next 20 years, we might get up to about 25% in total.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Well, I think given the time, I had promised 45 minutes. We have failed on all fronts. We failed. We failed with our meeting last week. We failed with the 45 minutes this week. But thanks very much to Andy and Kat. That's been extremely helpful. And what we'll do next week is we'll chew over this. We'll chew over the presentation that we watched last week, and we'll discuss how we're going to operate and whether we're going to go ahead with solar streets and who's going to do what.
Yep,
so
no problem at all.
Andy and Kat, and thank you very much for.
Okay, best of luck.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thanks all.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye.